Hi class, how are you today? That's... what should I use next? Detergent. That's detergent. The learning target for today is to identify and use the properties of equality. You're a 3 if you can use and identify the properties of equality. You're a 2 if you can use or identify the properties of equality, but not both. You're a 1 if you can state the properties, but you can't identify them and you also cannot use them. So if they were being used, you couldn't say, that's the multiplication property of equality. That sort of thing. And 0, I do not know the properties of equality. Let's get started. Alright, so a quick review on the properties that we've already talked about. So first, the commutative property. Remember, there were 2 of those, the one of addition and one of multiplication. So the addition one says A plus B equals B plus A. Order doesn't matter. And the multiplication one says pretty much the same thing. A times B is equal to B times A. The associative property, that was dealing with parentheses and saying where you put the parentheses, if it's just addition or just multiplication, doesn't matter. So if we have A plus B plus C, that is the same thing as saying A plus B plus C. And same thing goes with multiplication. A times B times C is equal to A times B times C. The inverse properties had to do with opposites. So in addition, if you had a number A, the opposite of that would be negative A. And so if you added those 2 opposites together, you would get 0. If you're talking about multiplication, and you had a number A, the opposite of that is 1 over A. So if you multiplied those 2 together, you would get 1. The identity properties were what could you do to a number to get itself. So if you have a number A and then add 0, you would get the number back, A. In multiplication, if you have a number A and you multiplied it by 1, you would get the number back. The distributive property said if you had some number A and it was multiplying in parentheses some B plus C, then that's the same thing as saying A times B plus A times C. So you're distributing the A to both B and C. And finally, the multiplication property of 0 just said any number A times 0 equals 0. Alright, so those are the properties that we already know. Now we're going to talk about some other properties, specifically known as properties of equality. Alright, we're going to start with the reflexive property of equality. Probably the most simplest one. If you have a number A, then it is always equal to itself. So it's just saying any number is always equal to itself. So A equals A, 5 equals 5, negative 7 equals negative 7, so on. The symmetric property of equality says if A and B are equal, if A equals B, then B equals A. So it doesn't matter if the A comes first or the B comes first. If they're equal, they're equal. The transitive property of equality says if A equals B, if A and B are equal, and B and C are equal, then A and C are equal. The next property is the substitution property of equality. That says if A and B are equal, then B can replace A in any expression. So, just a quick example of this. If you have, say, x equals 3, so you know x equals 3, and we have an expression x plus 5. Well, we know that x is 3, so we can replace x plus 5 with 3 plus 5, which will give us 8. So all we did was just replace x with 3 and then evaluated the expression. Alright, 4 more properties left, and these are all going to be very similar to each other. So the addition property of equality says if A equals B, then A plus C is equal to B plus C. So that means if those two things are equal, if you add the same number on both sides of the equal sign, then those two things are still equal. The subtraction property of equality says if A equals B, then A minus C is equal to B minus C. So again, if A and B are equal, then subtracting the same number will still keep them equal. The multiplication property of equality says if A equals B, then A times C is equal to B times C. So again, if we have two numbers A and B that are equal, if we multiply the same number on both sides of the equal sign, so multiply each of those numbers by the same number, they will still be equal. And now for the final one, division property of equality. This one is only a slightly bit different. So this one says if A equals B and C does not equal 0, so C can be any number, but it can't be 0, then A divided by C is equal to B divided by C. So again, if we have two numbers, A and B, and we divide them both by the same number, they will still be equal. Except if C is 0, because you just can't divide by 0. Alright, now for the sponge activity. I want you to complete this table. Just like when we were doing the properties of algebra, what changed between here and here? What property was used, and then put it there. And do that for each of these three. I was nice and gave you the substitution property of equality. We'll deal more of that in a little bit when we go into solving equations with these properties. But every time you replace something with what it equals, it's the substitution property of equality. So 4 times 2x is 8x. That's the substitution property of equality. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 3 is equal to 12. So it was substituted for something it was equal to. So the substitution property of equality. So that one shows up a lot, so I just threw that one in there for you to give it. So for these three, which properties were used? Once again, please make sure to take notes of the entire video and go back to the scale, circle where you think you are, take notes on the entire lesson, take a picture of everything, submit it to eBackpack, and have a good night.